So, yeah, so this is the final talk in the series on the 5 Buddha mandala. And yeah, I've got the task of not only following 4 wonderful talks, including by Ratna Ghosh, our president, last week, but also of introducing the Buddha who is, well, I wrote in my notes, in my opinion, the most elusive, but it seems like everyone agrees with me, so that's not a controversial statement. Yeah, Vairocana is, I think, the most challenging of the 5 Buddhas to conceive of, really, to think about. But I'm going to give it a go, and I'm also going to talk about the nature of that challenge and why it's worth engaging with, I hope. Yeah, so some things are fairly straightforward. Vairocana is the white Buddha at the center of the mandala. His female counterpart is Akasha Dateshpari. I think I've pronounced that correctly. I don't think I've heard anyone else say it, so I think that's right. Yeah, and she represents the wisdom of the Dharma Dhatu. The Dharma Dhatu is also a fairly elusive concept, but I'll be saying a little bit more about, I'll refer to that a little bit later on. So, like the other Buddhas, he's made of light. He has a distinctive mudra, or hand gesture. In his case, it's the turning of the wheel gesture. I'm just going to bring up some pictures now. Yeah, so there's this turning of the wheel of the Dharma mudra. Yeah, which yeah, and sometimes he's pictured with the mudra, and sometimes actually holding a wheel. Yeah, so this is an Aloka version of Vairocana, which is the artist who drew our painting downstairs of the Buddha. And there you can see the Dharma chakra, the wheel of the Dharma in his hands, which is the symbol for the Buddha's teaching. And to put it simply, I'll say a little bit more about that later on as well. I'm going to get my notes. I'll stop sharing and then I'll come back to it. Yeah, so he is also associated strongly with light. So all of the other Buddhas are obviously these radiant beings. They're not yeah, flesh and blood. They're made out of light. That was something that that Arivachin mentioned in particular in his talk. But the association with light is even stronger for Vairocana. His name literally means the illuminator. And that is sort of a feature in the quotation that I read out earlier. This, I mean, that happens quite a lot in the Avatamsaka Sutra. People are generating beams of transformational light all over the place. But yeah, it's appropriate that Vairocana is doing it in particular. Yeah, and there's probably many explanations for why that association is particularly strong. I mean, the connection between light and the Dharma is itself very strong. The enlightenment, obviously, is a phrase, the central metaphor of Buddhism. In some ways, is of illumination, of this movement from the darkness of not understanding, of ignorance to seeing, to vision. So that's very much there in Vairocana. There's also an association with the lion, which I've got a picture of. One with the lion. Yeah, so just as some of the other Buddhas have had, yeah, there you go. I believe these are supposed to be lions. So just as the other Buddhas have had associations with sort of with other animals, with elephants, or Amoghasiddhi had his connection with the sort of half human, half bird creatures. Vairocana's animal is the lion, and part of that symbolism is the connection that lions have with kingship. And yeah, with the regal, which is, yeah, again, something that's true of all of the Buddhas in the mandala, but somehow particularly of Vairocana. That's also reinforced by the Dharma chakra, which is in traditional Indian imagery associated with kingship. And again, I'll come back to that a little bit later on. This one, I thought, this sort of gold version of Vairocana with the hand in the mudra of the wheel turning, I think it's, or is that teaching? I can't remember. Anyway, someone can probably correct me later. Yeah, I thought this is sort of particularly kind of luminous version. Quite a good sculpture, anyway. Okay, so, right. Yeah, so, yeah, and the lion, of course, that associated with kinship is one that we share. We've got The Lion King, the Disney film, I'm sure everyone's seen. So that's something that, isn't we sort of understand that association as well, even if the wheel feels perhaps initially a bit more abstract. Yeah, so in some ways, that stuff is sort of it fits very neatly into the progression of the previous Buddhas that we've been through. He's got his color, he's got his emblem, he's got his mudra, he's got his animal. It's just another one in the series. But there are some differences which set him apart from the others in the mandala, though. And and add to this sort of elusiveness. Perhaps most obviously is the fact that he is at the center of the mandala. So he's positioned at the meeting of all the other Buddhist directions. He is, in a sense, a sort of fusion of their qualities, or to put it another way, he is their source. So, of course, Shakyamuni is the historical source for the 5 Buddha mandala. He came first, and then this symbol developed out of people meditating on the Buddha, most likely. But the Vairocana is sort of like it's the transcendental archetypal aspects of the Buddha have sort of been distilled. He's sometimes talked about as the primordial Buddha, as the embodiment of the Dharma as absolute reality itself, not particularly as a historical person. Yeah, and that's absolute reality, not with a capital A, trying to make a massive concept out of absolute, but it's definitely in bold font, absolute reality. It's big. It's as if the specifics of the Buddha as a man were allowed to just fall away, and what's left is this kind of beam of white light, which then refracts through the mandala into the rainbow of the other Buddhas. Each of the others presents to us a particular facet of the enlightened mind, but Vairocana is those facets unified into absolute perfection and purity. So perhaps we're starting to get a sense of what's difficult to talk about him, why it's difficult to talk about him. All of the Buddhas that we've encountered are incredibly rich, as we've heard in the talks. They've got limitless depths. They represent enlightenment, which is itself a sort of perfect state. So how can we imagine all of those qualities at the same time? It's sort of it feels easy to lose a sense of who Vairocana is, and like what his quality or character, like he's everything. So how can he be anything in particular? And then on top of that, there's also the challenge that some of us might face in working with the imagery itself, that the whiteness, the lions, the universal kingship, it's sort of all perhaps a bit reminds us of Christian imagery. Of the God in the monotheistic sense. It's worth also saying that he, white, of course, isn't an ethnicity. He's a being of pure light. He doesn't have an ethnicity, but still, even that might be, you can't help, particularly in these times, having sort of racial connections with the term. And even if all of that isn't an issue, you've still got absolute perfect enlightenment to deal with, like complete purity, whether that means with these sort of things that might seem somewhat distant, alien, even worse than that, even perhaps. If I ask you to picture white light, how does that image strike you on its own? It might be a pleasant one of daylight or some other association, but I think there's also connections with with aliens, beams of light, and with police interrogation rooms and the sort of flashlight in your eyes. There's death and the white light at the end of the tunnel, the cold, hard light of day. So there's lots of, white light has a bit of a mixed sort of role in our kind of iconography, I think, as a culture. And if that is how any of that strikes you, that's absolutely fine. You're certainly not alone. So in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo doll, when someone dies, they encounter reality directly as the clear light of the void. Presumably light is here a kind of metaphor for some other experience that's harder to communicate, but that is the metaphor that's been chosen by that tradition. And usually that experience is too much for an unenlightened person, and they have to turn away from it towards something that's more familiar, more dualistic. And what is said to appear is the 5 Buddha mandala. And Vairocana being the first Buddha who appears out of the clear light of the void. However, even that is usually too much for people. He appears or he may appear as a terrible radiance, a vast white light, and a terrible roaring sound. Understandably, people turn away from that. We turn away from that if we've been born again. And not recognizing Vairocana for the compassionate being that he is, or the fact that he is not a separate being at all, but manifestation of the transcendental, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. We turn away. We turn towards the light of rebirth, repetition, going back to the familiar. And that sort of, on a kind of mythic level, mirrors something that I can see for myself in my own kind of journey with responding to Vairocana imagery. So in the past, Green Tara was very much the figure that I felt most strongly connected to. And she's still very much sort of a bodhisattva that I think about a lot. But gradually, Vairocana is sort of coming to the fore and is starting to embody things that no other figure quite does for me. And yet, at the same time, I still notice that in my imagination, when I try to picture this figure, he can be somewhat distant or aloof or cold or all sorts of things. Apparently the light of truth in my imagination is somewhat stark, even harsh, if I'm not really deeply connected with it. Just the idea of it comes out that way sometimes. And there have been other times when I feel I'm seeing more clearly what that actually means. And I know that the light is love in some way. There's no other word for it. But that feels like it. I'm constantly working towards that. So for me, I think that has something to do with wisdom and compassion and the way that they're not really separate, as I think Ratnagosha mentioned last week, and metta being the key to that fusion. But for me, as an unenlightened human being, it's really easy to sort of separate them. Having not integrated all of my emotions, it's sort of easy to forget the vital role that emotions play in seeing clearly what's really going on. We are emotional beings. To try and discount that means we're not really seeing everything that's going on. Other people that are emotional, to try and remove emotion from the equations, to sort of not see them fully either. But perhaps we all have the image of the composed figure of authority that seems to be above feeling and just sees what needs to be done. Especially perhaps this is especially strong if you're English. Maybe not. And so Vairocana can very easily fall into that slightly cold notion of authority and wisdom without emotion. But more than that, I think, and this is the kind of meat of what I'm going to be talking about, is I think love is frightening sometimes. Love can be rather kind of merciless, really. I'm talking, when I say love, obviously about, I will be coming to talk about metta, but initially even more mundane forms of connection with other people is a bit much some of the time. Love can be a bit like having a hospital sponge bath. It doesn't matter how tender or compassionate it is, people are getting in everywhere you don't want people to go. All of the nooks and the crannies, into every pore of your body, as the Avatamsaka Sutra sort of memorably uses this phrase. And on a mundane level, you probably, I'm sure you've all experienced this at different times. So one example that keeps coming to mind is, you know, our friends and our family, our lovers, they like things about us that we don't really want to acknowledge. Perhaps it's not especially strong. Like fairly mild examples, my last girlfriend, I remember having a conversation with her. We were just talking about something was happening with her work one day, and something someone had done, and I said something like, without really thinking about it, like, oh gosh, she's a silly goose, or something like that. I wasn't trying to be especially cute, but I was just a turn of phrase that came out. And she said very affectionately that I sounded like a nice old lady, and that it happens quite often. And she's not the first person who's told me that. And that's obviously not how I see myself or the image that I want to project. But apparently other people do see it and they quite like it, which is uncomfortable. But yeah, more than that, there's obviously the risk that we take when we reveal ourselves, when we share more than we normally would. The things that we scrupulously hide from ourselves in hiding them from others. There's the fear of rejection, of course, but also there is the fear of acceptance as well, of having to face up to the fact that we are not the sleek sort of sphere of self that we spend so much time polishing. That sort of bauble version of us is actually hanging from the massive fleshy ear of who we actually are. Yeah, and it's painful to be accepted by someone else for things that we haven't accepted about ourselves. And just as an ear is part of a larger body, in this process of being loved somewhat tactlessly, we have to accept ourselves as existing in relation to something larger than us alone, even if that just means in the eyes of another. But of course, Vairocana isn't anyone's girlfriend. He is the light at the heart of reality. So naturally, the revelations include things which are harder to hear. One of the reasons that I think they're harder to hear is that we take them rather personally. So when what's shown to us is only a particular manifestation of a state that's common to all conditioned beings, basically, we still hear it as if we're personally being criticized. So perhaps this is also the reason that lines in, like the one in the sevenfold puja that you all know about, the evil that we have heaped up, or the line in the reading I gave earlier about where the drum is, I think it's the drum, yeah, is telling the beings recently liberated from hell that they were there as a result of their actions and the foolishness that they committed. That can come across as judgmental, as yeah, when what is really being pointed out is the fact that we are in the grips of the delusion of our separateness, that we are all bound to experience craving, resentment, confusion, suffering, and that it's our actions that keep us in that grip ultimately. And they are evil in the sense that they don't do us any good or anyone else. But it's hard not to hear that as a specific judgment handed down from one person to another, rather than as an example of a general principle. But certainly when you're dealing with a being like Vairocana, there's no question of being thrown out of his awareness or his compassionate well-wishing. Like there's no, yeah, all the things that normally come with judgment are simply not there. But that principle is that kind of general principle of delusion is certainly not one that I'm exempt from, or of being sort of self-referential. So in Vasantra's Puja to Akasha, which is in the big blue puja book, the really big one, which I was doing quite a lot through the lockdown, particularly at the start. The Confession of Faults section says, though I talk of love and care, when I look at how I act, I am the center of the world around which the moon and stars revolve. I remember the first time I read it, it made me cry. There's something really poignant about it. And somehow the pressure of the times that we're in, as they've kind of mounted, I've just become kind of more aware of how true that is, actually. Yeah, it's a struggle to see beyond your own orbit, but beyond the thing that you're sort of, beyond our self-concern. But that's okay. While I personally can take responsibility for my actions, the things that I may be doing that deepen that predicament, I know I'm not the only one in it, and it's a hard thing to get out of. It comes with being a human being, but we're not trapped in that either. It's as though we're all nearsighted and a bit drunk, and also riding on the back of a very hungry horse. And in this image, we are also the horse. But I think to see that, to really see it, with the heart and with the discerning mind, is to begin to forgive it, ourselves, and others. Of course, we're not in control. We can't really see where we're going, and we're drunk, more so since the pubs reopened. And the horse is very hungry, so it's all over the place. You can't keep it out of the hedgerows. And I think when we're aware of these tendencies in the world without compassion, we can become cynical. Perhaps it's too easy to box it up when I say cynical, as these cynical people. I'm talking, I guess, about something that we all experience. I think this is part of where faith comes in that reading from earlier. That it's as though our experience of suffering, of the unsatisfactoriness of things, does on a certain level become universal, that we feel that the world is not right. The world's kind of lit up harshly, and it's dukkha in that sense. But that awareness hasn't made the jump to faith, or not all of it has. So we don't quite feel the possibility of anything else. We can't really bear to feel the full difficulty that's part of us either as a result. So we retreat into blame and polarization, and the moon and stars continue to seem as though they revolve around us. We can't see clearly without the light of compassion that Vairocana brings or represents. But it isn't just a question of trading the son of ourselves for the son of a distant god. Vairocana stands for the transcendence of separation itself. All the Buddhas we've previously met have a time of day associated with them. They are the light of the sun reaching us from certain angles, so to speak. Amoga Siddhi is the setting sun. I think that's right. Amoga Siddhi is night. Amitabha is the setting sun. But Vairocana has no association with a particular time of day. The light is coming from everywhere, as again that reading mentioned. It is to be inside the sun, actually. To be inside the sun. A sun that is equal in size to space itself, which is infinite. And the Dharma chakra, that image that he's holding, is also connected with this. So as well as representing the Dharma, the law which sort of describes our predicament and also names the road for rising above it, the shape of the symbol, though, with its spokes radiating out through a circle which represents totality, kingship, far from representing the usual kind of egotism that we've been talking about, it represents transcendence and connects to the infinite sort of paradoxes of space that the Avatamsaka Sutra was kind of bringing in at the end. that's because the wheel is the mandala, as well as being the Dharma chakra. It is the mandala. So Vairocana is holding the mandala in which he and all of the other Buddhas sit. And the mandala is also the image of the entire universe. So he's holding everything. And presumably there is also another tiny Vairocana at the center of that wheel, holding another Dharma chakra in which there are another 5 Buddhas, and so on forever. And suddenly the space is a kind of nonsense, really, and the light is coming from everywhere. And who can say where the center is and where the circumference is? Perhaps that all sounds like a sort of entertaining abstraction, but I think it is a vision of how our daily lives could be, or more accurately, I think, how they actually are, whether we recognize it or not. If we were to experience the stream of phenomena which make us up without the poles of self and other, if we were to recognize every perception as just mind unfolding, who can say where we end, really? Every end we can trace is also a part of us in that scheme. And then to come face to face with another, like you all, for example, and this is the point where I make sure I've got you all on gallery view. Yeah, to come face to face with you all, and to know that you are also seeing me, and that in your mind, of me, interpreted through every experience you have ever had. So it's not exactly the same person I think I am. And at the same time, I'm also looking at you and trying to work out, having my own interpretation of who you are, thinking about me. And suddenly we're in a kind of hall of mirrors, and we are face to face with a particular kind of infinity again. Yeah, and yet, yeah, so it's as if I am, when I am attempting to imagine you, I am seeing worlds in atoms. So these tiny parts of, in this case, my experience, or me as a tiny part of yours, these tiny atoms have the potential to be Buddha lands. Buddha land is a kind of center of the universe, in which the most important thing that could possibly happen is bound to happen. Yeah, so that image at the end of the sutra, where there's many Buddha lands reduced to atoms in one hand, and then you walk out for an aeon and drop one, and then you do it again and again, and then bring it all together again. I think if we were closer to enlightenment, just meeting people would probably be like that. Yeah, but that everything is so hard to hold on to. I mean, where do you put everything? Like, there's nowhere left to put it. It needs a figurehead, actually. It needs a face, something that you can turn to remember that sense of mysterious, radical possibility, which is always with us. Yeah, and so Subhuti talks about the need to find a transcendental object, something that symbolizes for us as an object to our mind and senses what is truly beyond all question is subject and object of grasper and grasped. And how about a being made of white light, which is love, holding a wheel, which is at once the truth and the world? So yeah, the absolute purity and goodness of Vairocana is how things really, really are. It's everywhere, all of the time. Yeah, and seeing that is the Dharma Dhatu, I think, unless I'm getting it completely wrong. So it's the Dharma Dhatu literally means the sort of sphere of the Dharma. And that's the wisdom that Akasha Teshvari, the female equivalent of Vairocana, represents. Yeah, and that is a hard thing to do. If it were easy, we would already be enlightened. But it is worth every effort that we can make. Thinking of Vairocana in all its clarity and compassion is one way of turning towards infinity. And having said all of this. I still don't know even remotely who he is, or even really what I am, or what the world is really like. And all I can do is hope that I continue to turn towards the truth which he embodies for the rest of my life. I said that a bit without crying, which I hadn't been able to do until now, so that's good. Yeah, and that is me. So thank you very much. And I have some questions for you at the end, but I don't know if you want to hear those now or whether you want to say something first, Khemaisri.
No, let's have the questions now, Gareth.
Okay. So yeah, 3 questions. What do you think of in connection with white light? What are your associations with white light? Which of the 5 Buddhas has caught your imagination the most out of this series? And then finally, what images or symbols or figures catch something of the transcendental for you? Is there anything that does something of that, brings that mystery alive for you? So yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Gareth, very much. Just about 10 minutes, and I will unmute it. We will be unmuted right at the end to say goodbye. But this last part of the evening is for actually taking you through the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, and then we're going to dissolve that mandala. So I'm just going to take you through them, bring them to mind. So this is closing this series, really. But not to stop practicing with these Buddhas, bringing them to mind and using the journey, using them on your journey. Let them help you. Okay. So you can close your eyes. And I will describe in a way the figures in the visual, but in a way you might not actually be so visual, and that doesn't matter at all. You just get a feel for them. It's a bit like if you bring a friend to mind now. You might not see them, but you know you have them in your mind. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to enter the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, which is, as was mentioned in my group, it is like that is the symbol of enlightenment itself, of the enlightened mind. All these qualities are united in the enlightened mind. So starting with Akshobhya, the blue realm, the Buddha of the blue realm, deep blue. There's Akshobhya and the female Buddha, Lochana. And their hand gesture is touching the earth, touching the earth. And that mudra, that hand gesture of touching the earth, symbolizes unshakable confidence. Unshakable confidence, faith in practice, faith in the journey. Unshakable confidence that you can do it. And the wisdom of that realm, the blue realm, is mirror-like wisdom, wisdom that sees us clearly as a mirror. And with that mirror-like wisdom, hatred, ill will is transformed. Aversion is transformed. And then we move to the yellow realm. Yellow like the sun midday, the realm of Ratnasambhava and Mamaki. Golden yellow, warm. And the gesture, the hand mudra of Ratnasambhava is generosity, a hand reaching out into the world. The gesture of generosity. And the wisdom is the wisdom of equality. All beings being equal, having the potential for change, for growth, for enlightenment, for insight. Wisdom of equality. The hand gesture of generosity. And with that, transforming the tendency to arrogance or pride. All dissolving in this beautiful yellow light. And then we move to the red realm, the red light of the setting sun, the red light of love. And that's the realm of Amitabha and Asini. And the hand gesture here is meditation. Here there is the transformation through meditation and through love, loving kindness. And the wisdom is the wisdom of uniqueness. Everything is unique. And that wisdom and through meditation, what is transformed is craving. And then we move to the green realm of Amoghasiddhi and Tara. Deep green. Green like the midnight or being in a thick or forest. Amoghasiddhi with the hand gesture of fearlessness, hand up, palm outwards, facing the world, facing everything in fearlessness. Transforming the tendency to jealousy. And the wisdom of that green realm is the wisdom of accomplishing everything, total integration. Nothing more to be accomplished. Green light. And then we move into the center of this mandala, the white realm of Vairocana and Akasha Datisvari. White light. The wisdom of reality, the Dharma Dhatu. the hand gesture of turning the wheel of teaching. And here, all the other Buddhas integrate, unifies into this white light of Vairocana, into the depth of reality, into wisdom and compassion. And now we're going to dissolve the mandala. So imagine that the four Buddhas around Vairocana are just being absorbed into Vairocana, into the white light. They're dissolved into white light, into the center. And then Vairocana dissolves into just white light, filling infinite space. And then this white light kind of diffuses. And all there is wisdom and compassion. So now just coming back to sitting here, feeling your body and feeling the floor underneath you. And it's coming back into being with everybody else here on screen. You can open your eyes and take everybody in. So, yeah, thank you all for being here tonight. So yes, we have dissolved the mandala, but that's not the last of it. Yeah, let's keep practicing and bringing these figures and this rich symbolism to mind.